The gaslight flickered across the grand ballroom as laughter sliced through the air like a sharpened blade. Lady Adelia Monroe's voice rose above the music, sweet and cruel at once, meant to be heard by everyone within reach. Miss Marchwood has accepted the hand of the penniless Baron Harrowgate. How very charitable of her. The word charitable dripped with poison. A ripple of laughter followed, soft but eager, like hounds catching a scent. Fans lifted halfway to hide smiles. Heads leaned together. Judgment spread quickly in silken whispers. Eveline Marchwood stood near the marble archway, her body still, her gloved fingers clutching her mother's old pearl brooch as though it were the last solid thing in the room. The pearls were chipped and unfashionable now, much like her position in society. She felt every eye turn toward her, felt the weight of curiosity and mockery press against her spine. So that is what becomes of a magistrate's daughter when fortune turns its back, someone murmured behind a painted fan, settling for a title without a roof. How the mighty have fallen, another voice added. The season had been merciless to Eveline. Once, doors had opened for her without question. Invitations had arrived in neat stacks. Mothers had smiled too warmly, sons had lingered too long. Then her father's disgrace had shattered everything. His name, once spoken with respect, now carried shame. His fortune vanished. His influence dissolved. And with it, Eveline's future. At 24, with no dowry and a stained family name, she had become something society feared. A warning. A reminder that comfort could vanish overnight. She must believe in love, Lady Adelia continued loudly, enjoying the attention. There can be no other reason to accept a baron without land. Eveline felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she did not lower her head. She stood straight, her posture calm, almost regal, though her gown was modest, beside the extravagant silk surrounding her. "I hear he pawned his mother's jewels last winter," Lord Kensington said with false concern. "Rather tragic." "Better to be ruined with a title than ruined without one," his companion replied. More laughter followed. Eveline took a slow breath and stepped forward. Each step across the marble floor was measured and deliberate. The crowd parted, not out of respect, but anticipation. They wanted to see her break. She stopped near the refreshment table where Lady Adelia held court, surrounded by admirers and loyal followers. The older woman's eyes gleamed when she saw Eveline approach. "Miss Marchwood," Lady Adelia announced, her voice sharp and pleased. "How brave of you to attend this evening. We were just discussing your engagement." "Indeed, Lady Monroe," Eveline replied, her voice quiet but steady. "How thoughtful of you to concern yourself with my affairs." Lady Adelia snapped her fan open. "Tell me, does Baron Harrowgate still live above that little bookshop? Or has he found more suitable shelter for his future wife?" The room fell silent. All ears leaned closer. Eveline's fingers trembled against the pearl brooch, but her gaze did not waver. "I believe a home is built by character, not by stone alone." A soft gasp came from a nearby debutante. Lady Adelia smiled thinly. "How charmingly hopeful." "I do hope such beliefs keep you warm when winter comes." She turned slightly. "Oh, forgive me. Allow me to introduce Mr. Winters, solicitor to the late Duke of Blackmere. He was just telling us about the estates being settled. Such a pity there was no direct heir." Eveline inclined her head politely. The solicitor barely noticed her. Focused instead on documents he discreetly showed Lord Kensington. "Perhaps you might explain to Miss Marchwood the duties of managing a title," Lady Adelia continued. "She will soon be a baroness, though without servants or silver." Laughter broke out again. Eveline felt the strain in her chest, pride stretched thin. She turned, ready to retreat with dignity, when the massive doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. The music faltered. The butler's voice rang clear. "Baron Lucian Harrowgate." Every head turned. He stood framed in the doorway, tall and composed, dressed in black evening attire of simple elegance. There was nothing careless or desperate about him. No jewels adorned him, no display of excess. Yet he carried himself with quiet authority. His gray eyes swept the room, cool and observant, until they found Eveline. Without hesitation, he walked toward her. Whispers followed him like a tide. The penniless baron had come, and he was not hiding. "Miss Marchwood," he said when he reached her, bowing slightly, "I believe this dance was promised to me." The room held its breath. "Yes, my lord," Eveline replied, placing her hand in his. "It was." The orchestra resumed. Lucien led her to the center of the floor, his hand steady at her waist, his movements precise. The crowd parted as they passed, expressions torn between shock and fascination. "They are watching," Eveline murmured. "Let them," Lucien replied calmly. "They require entertainment." As they turned, Eveline glimpsed Lady Adelia's stiff smile. "You should know," Eveline said softly, "that standing with me may harm what remains of your reputation." "And yet," he said, his voice unreadable, "here I stand." She looked up at him. "Why did you ask me to marry you, knowing what they say?" He studied her face as they moved. "Why did you accept?" "Because you spoke to me as an equal," she answered. "Because you listened." Something flickered in his eyes. The music ended. He guided her toward a quieter corner where a small seating area offered brief privacy. Before he could speak, Lady Adelia approached again, her smile forced. "What a surprise, Baron Harrowgate. We had quite given up hope of seeing you." Lucien bowed. "As unexpected as your invitation." Lady Adelia's gaze sharpened. "One does wonder about practical matters. Ashbourne Hall is uninhabitable, I hear. Where will you live?" Before he could answer, the solicitor stepped forward, his attention fixed on Lucien. "Pardon me," Mr. Winters said slowly, "but did you say Baron Harrowgate?" "I did," Lucien replied, "and you are Mr. Winters." The solicitor's eyes widened. "May I ask your mother's maiden name?" Lucien hesitated. "Rayburn." A murmur spread through the crowd. "And your age?" Winters pressed. 32. The solicitor drew in a sharp breath. He pulled a sealed document from his coat. "My lord," he said quietly, "I have been searching for you. There is a matter concerning an inheritance long thought lost." Lady Adelia paled. "Inheritance?" "That," Winters said firmly, "is a private matter." Lucien's hand moved unconsciously to the worn signet ring on his finger. "I will meet you tomorrow," he said at last. The whispers erupted. As Lucien turned back to Eveline, she saw something she had not seen before. Shock. 3 weeks passed. Rumors spread faster than truth ever could. Eveline received only a brief note from Lucien, asking for trust. Then, on a rain-soaked afternoon, Mr. Winters arrived at her door. What he revealed would change everything. And Eveline's world stood on the edge of something far greater than she had ever imagined. The rain pressed against the tall windows of the Marchwood townhouse as Mr. Winters finished speaking. His words hung heavy in the quiet room, each one settling into Eveline's mind like a stone dropped into deep water. "The man known as Baron Lucien Harrowgate," the solicitor said gently, "is in truth Lord Lucien Rayburn Blackmere, rightful Duke of Blackmere." Eveline did not speak. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her thoughts racing too quickly to grasp. Duke. Fortune. Power. Words that did not belong to the man she had spoken with about books and ideas, the man who had listened when others dismissed her. "You are certain," she finally said. "As certain as law allows," Mr. Winters replied. "The birth records, the ring he wears, the testimony of those who protected him, all confirm it." Eveline looked down at her hands. "Does society know?" "The announcement will be made tomorrow," he said. "His Grace wished you to hear it first." Quote. A sealed letter rested on the desk. Eveline reached for it with unsteady fingers. Lucien's handwriting greeted her, familiar and careful. "The man who proposed remains the same, though the world may see him differently. I ask only that you decide with truth in your heart." She closed her eyes. The room felt smaller somehow. as if the walls themselves pressed closer. Everything had changed, and yet nothing had. That evening, a carriage carried her through streets she barely recognized, stopping before Blackmere House. Light poured from every window. Servants moved with purpose. The house, once abandoned, now breathed life again. Inside, grandeur surrounded her, marble floors, towering columns, portraits of generations past, and waiting in the library, Lucian. He turned when she entered, his expression unreadable until his eyes met hers. Then the tension in his shoulders eased. "You came," he said quietly. "I had to," Eveline replied. "There is too much to understand." He gestured for her to sit. "I owe you more than explanations. I owe you honesty." He told her everything. The hidden childhood, the danger, the life built carefully in shadows. How the truth had reached him only weeks before. "When I asked you to marry me," he said, "I believed myself a man with little to offer but sincerity." "And now?" she asked. "Now," he said slowly, "I am a man burdened with more than I ever sought." Silence stretched between them. "At Lady Monroe's ball," Eveline said, "you knew nothing of this." "No," he said, "I was content to remain unseen." She studied his face. "Then nothing you said to me was false." "Nothing," he answered firmly. She stood and walked toward the fire. "You must understand my hesitation. The world will now see me differently. They will say I stayed for your fortune. And if you left," he said quietly, "they would praise your restraint." She turned back to him. "What do you want, Lucian?" He did not hesitate. "I want you to choose freely, not as a woman cornered by circumstance, but as one who sees the truth of me." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box, opening it to reveal a sapphire ring that glimmered softly. "This is not an obligation," he said. "It is a question." Eveline's breath caught. Before she could answer, a servant announced Lady Adelia Monroe. Lucian's mouth curved into a restrained smile. Perfect timing. Lady Adelia entered the blue drawing-room with practiced grace. Though her eyes betrayed calculation, she curtsied deeply. "Your Grace," she said smoothly, "I came to offer guidance." Lucian remained standing. Unnecessary. Her gaze flicked to Eveline, then back. "Society is eager to welcome you. Certain alliances—" "My alliance," Lucian interrupted, "is already chosen." Lady Adelia's smile faltered. "Surely circumstances have changed." "Indeed," Eveline said softly. "They have revealed character." The room grew still. Lady Adelia recovered quickly. "Of course, I meant no offense." Lucian's voice cooled. "You meant amusement." Her fan tightened in her grip. "I believe," Lucian continued, "that you owe Miss Marchwood an apology." Lady Adelia's pride wavered. Slowly she inclined her head. "If my words cause discomfort, I regret them." Eveline met her gaze evenly. "Accepted." Relief flickered across the older woman's face. When she departed, Lucian turned back to Eveline. "You showed mercy where others would not." "Power does not require cruelty," Eveline said. "I learned that from you." He stepped closer. "Then you understand why I hope you will stay." She looked at the ring once more. "I did not accept you because you were poor. And I will not accept you because you are powerful." He nodded. "I accept," she said, "because you are the same man." The breath he released was unsteady. He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand warm around hers. "Tomorrow," he said, "the world will see us." "And tomorrow," Eveline replied, "I will not bow to it." Quote, Beyond the windows the rain eased, leaving the city washed clean, as if preparing for a reckoning neither of them could yet imagine. Blackmere House had not seen such light in years. Candle flames danced in every chandelier, throwing gold across marble floors polished until they mirrored the stars above. Music drifted through the halls, steady and elegant, filling spaces that had once known only silence. The great ballroom breathed again, alive with movement, color, and expectation. London society arrived in full force. Carriages lined the drive, one after another delivering dukes, ladies, ministers, and families who only weeks earlier had whispered with delight at the downfall of Eveline Marchwood. Now they stepped inside Blackmere House with carefully arranged smiles and rehearsed reverence. Eveline stood alone in a quiet antechamber, her hands resting lightly before her. Her gown of deep sapphire silk caught the candlelight with every breath she took. The diamond tiara felt heavier than she expected, not from weight, but meaning. She barely recognized the woman reflected in the mirror, composed, poised, and undeniably powerful. Yet beneath the finery, she was the same woman who had stood alone by a ballroom archway and endured laughter without breaking. A soft knock sounded. "Miss Marchwood," Mr. Winters said gently as he entered. "His Grace awaits." She nodded once. "I am ready." As the massive doors opened, conversation ceased. Every face turned toward her. At the far end of the ballroom, standing upon a raised platform, Lucian waited. He wore formal court dress, dark and precise, the insignia of his rank resting upon his chest. He looked every inch the Duke of Blackmere, but when his eyes met hers, the man she knew emerged, calm, steady, quietly certain. Eveline walked forward. The crowd parted as she passed, curtsies and bows replacing whispers. She recognized faces that had once mocked her, mouths that had laughed at her engagement. Their expressions now held admiration, calculation, even envy. Society had already rewritten its memory. Lucien descended the steps and took her hand. He raised it to his lips, not as performance but respect. "My lords and ladies," he said, his voice carrying with ease, "allow me to present the woman who accepted my hand when I appeared to have nothing." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "She did not choose me for wealth," he continued. "She chose me for character. That truth will define my title far more than any fortune." Eveline felt emotion rise, but she did not falter. Lucian turned to her. "Will you honor me with the first dance, my lady?" "With all my heart," she replied. The orchestra began. They moved together at the center of the ballroom, their steps perfectly matched. This time, there were no cruel smiles, no cutting laughter, only silence, broken by awe. As they turned, Eveline caught sight of Lady Adelia Monroe standing among the guests. The woman's face was carefully composed, but her eyes betrayed disbelief. Eveline met her gaze calmly, offering a small nod. Nothing more was needed. "They will never stop watching," Lucian murmured. "Let them," Eveline said. "We owe them nothing." As the dance ended, applause filled the room, restrained but sincere. The spell had been cast. London had accepted its new power. Later, as the night deepened, Lucian led Eveline onto a moonlit terrace overlooking the gardens. The noise of the ballroom softened behind them, replaced by cool air and quiet. "Are you afraid?" he asked. She considered the question. "No. I was afraid when I stood alone. I am not alone now." He smiled. "I once believed nobility was something to be hidden. And I once believed worth had to be proven," she replied. Together they looked out across the estate that now belonged to them both. Tomorrow would bring court appearances, alliances, expectations, and endless scrutiny. But tonight belonged only to truth. Lucian took her hand, the restored signet ring warm beneath his touch. "Whatever the world demands," he said, "we will meet it together." "Yes," Eveline said softly, "together." Quote. Behind them, Blackmere House glowed against the night, no longer a monument to silence, but to a choice made when nothing was promised. And in that choice, a penniless baron and a woman the world dismissed had found something far richer than fortune.